All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's turn to election 2014. Our good friend Richard St. Paul has decided to grace us with his presence here. You can't see this under the table, but even with injury, Richard St. Paul is still here.
And smiling.
And smiling. All right, last night at this time, we had a one-on-one debate on Long Island, the 1st Congressional District. Democratic incumbent Tim Bishop and his Republican challenger, State Senator Lee Zeldin. Guys, the race is very tight. It was a contentious debate between the two. And it's funny for me, it spoke about so many things, Andrew. This thing was about government, good or bad, and it's a theme I've seen play out everywhere.
And Newsday just endorsed Zeldin today, that came out today. So we'll see if that, I know, Dominic, you don't think that newspaper endorsements really carry that much weight anymore.
Not much at all.
But it'll be interesting to see if that dynamic.
The Times maybe 1 or 2% in certain tight races. Forget newspaper endorsements. Newspapers a day, but continue your point.
Well, it's
not to take us off the point.
This is a district that has been targeted by Republicans for the last 4 cycles or 5 cycles, and every time, and there have been a couple of close ones. I think 2 or 4 years ago.
All 2 or 4 years ago.
It went to a recount, and every time Bishop has managed to come out on top, and the district continues to carve into a somewhat more Democratic district. This is the kind of race that could be impacted by a national wave, and we'll get into some of the national numbers in our next segment. But there are some close races that, boy, if just more Republicans show up to the polls on Election Day because they're more motivated, this could wind up being an upset.
Is that the message? We'll get national next segment, but regionally here, some of the races that Republicans didn't really bother 2 years ago, they think they got a shot now because the Democrats are vulnerable. It doesn't even almost matter who the incumbent is, they're vulnerable.
Yeah, no, they certainly believe, the Republicans believe that Democrats are vulnerable on a national level. The president's lacking in terms of his popularity and his approval rating, and so that is felt nationally, as we see. But I think overall, I think the real races to watch are the U.S. Senate races, and the Republicans taking hold of the Senate. The congressional races are still, to me, more local races, where you have the opportunity to get to know your congressman, and I think at the end of the day, people will vote whether or not they think their congressman is doing a good job, whereas the Senate race, you don't really get to see know your U.S. Senator, and I think they're much more impacted by what's going on nationally.
Well, let me get to a couple of them. Another congressional race, and we'll get to the Senate races and national next segment. Scott Garrett in New Jersey, Andrew. He's the incumbent Republican, and he's up against Democratic challenger Roy Cho. This for the 5th Congressional District. A lot of polls show Garrett's only got a 5-point lead. What's up here, Andrew? Because usually he wins double digits and sometimes going away.
This one's hard to figure. This was not even the race in New Jersey that I was keeping my eye on. I was more focused on a race that's further south.
Runyon's old seat, right?
Runyon's old seat, and also Frank Lobiondo in the 1st district in New Jersey, just because that district went to Obama twice in recent elections. This one's a little hard. I mean, again, Garrett's a Republican. He's an incumbent. You would think he would be safe, especially with the way things are trending at this point. It just, again, I think this might be another issue of the district changing, and perhaps changing to the advantage of Democrats, though it might not show up in this election.
Look, the possibility of beating an incumbent is very difficult. I think ultimately at the end of the day, you're going to see very small changes, maybe 8-seat gain for Republicans nationally.
But wouldn't you think with such low turnout, right, especially in an off-year election, that it's going to be, we're going to see some surprises only because 30% of people are going to vote in some places.
Very few surprises, ultimately. Yes, you'll see a couple, but not a lot.
All right. Well, this one surprises me, and that's in Connecticut. Gubernatorial race here, Democratic incumbent Daniel Malloy, Republican businessman Tom Foley, and this thing's neck and neck. You look at the polls here, this thing is albeit a toss-up, and for me at least, surprising because it's not like Foley has been this, he came in with a ton of name recognition, and he was beloved. He ran last time, albeit it was close, but still, he's got his own sets of baggage. Malloy, it just seems that personality-wise, he just is not connected with Connecticutans, and you would think, especially after Newtown, where in a crisis a governor will emerge, to some he came off as hard-hearted. Maybe that's too strong, but not as empathetic as maybe he could be. It's interesting that this thing's so close.
Well, personality, Richard, oftentimes can decide an election. It can be enough to push one over the top, or certainly to close a large gap in the polls. But piggybacking on Andrew's point, if I were running as a Democrat right now, no matter where I'm running, congressional, gubernatorial, or across the country, I would not be a happy camper because there are no coattails at all from the White House.
And you're already starting to see nationally, forget about them distancing themselves from Obama. They're even distancing themselves in the House from Nancy Pelosi and in the Senate from Harry Reid. All right, Andrew, I want to get to a couple quick New York races. One in Staten Island and one up in the Hudson Valley. You've got incumbent Democrat in New York in the 18th District, Sean Patrick Maloney, going off against Nan Hayworth. Same story, different seats. This is always a razor-thin district with registration. She used to be the incumbent. She lost to him. Now she's running as a challenger against him, and it's close again.
And this is the district that's flip-flopped every election since 2008. And we knew at the beginning of this cycle that this was going to be a particularly close race. There have been some late polls that have shown her closing the gap against Sean Patrick Maloney, but I think at the end of the day, it's still going to be Maloney's seat, assuming the turnout works out that way. You are always going to see a tightening of the race. It's two candidates that the voters there know particularly well, but it also seems to cut very specifically on national issues. This seems, if you like the Democratic agenda in Congress.
And the money says Maloney squeaks this out, but it'll be close. Finally, you two guys, if you had to bet money right now, in the 11th District, does embattled Congressman Michael Grimm keep his job, or does this Recchi, a guy who's running as bad a campaign as he can, beat the guy that many people think could be going away to jail?
I think this is a toss-up.
Don't you play politics?
I'll bet $1 that Grimm pulls it out because he's a likable guy.
Take his money?
Grimm has the personality. Grimm has the looks. Grimm is from Staten Island. He'll keep the seat, but he's going to have to step down in December when his federal trial starts, if he's convicted.
I agree with Dominic on both parts, but boy, would I love to be a fly on the wall in the back room of both of their headquarters on election night, just to see their reactions. It would be priceless.
We'll be there at their headquarters. I don't know if they'll let us behind the black curtain, but all right, coming up next. These guys want to talk national politics. We'll do just that. Could this be the face of the next Senate Majority Leader? Well, maybe he won't even win his own race, but new polling doesn't look good for Democrats. We'll explain after this.